Please follow the disclaimer. For educational purposes only. The content presented in this video is strictly for informational and educational purposes. It reflects the creator's personal research and opinions, and does not constitute professional advice. Not legal advice. This video does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. I am not a licensed lawyer. Laws, bar requirements, and regulations vary by state and are subject to change. Always consult with a qualified attorney in your jurisdiction for specific legal guidance. No financial or career guarantees. Any discussion regarding salaries, income potential, or career outcomes constitutes estimates based on general market data. Actual earnings and career progression vary based on individual circumstances, location, and effort. We make no guarantees of financial success or employment. Limitation of liability. The creator assumes no responsibility or liability for any errors or omissions in the content, or for any actions taken based on the information provided. Please conduct your own due diligence. Average salary for a lawyer in the United States is over $148,000 a year. That's the number they dangle in front of you. It's the prize. The corner office, the respect, the power to make a real difference. But here's the number they don't talk about. Nearly a quarter of all law school graduates don't pass the bar exam on their first try. And a shocking number of those who do never even end up practicing law. Why? Because the path to becoming a lawyer isn't a clear, straight road. It's a 7 to 8 year strategic battle. A high-stakes game filled with hidden traps and brutal gatekeepers designed to weed people out. Most aspiring lawyers walk into this game completely blind, armed with nothing but good intentions and what they've seen on TV. They make critical mistakes in college, they bomb the single most important test of their lives, and they rack up 6 figures in debt only to find themselves lost and disillusioned. That is not going to be you. This video is your new playbook. Your insider's guide. We are going to break down the entire process into 5 mission-critical steps. This isn't the generic advice your college advisor gives you. This is the unwritten rulebook, the strategy you need to not only survive the journey, but to dominate it, and build a legal career that actually excites you. We're going to turn this confusing, overwhelming process into a clear, actionable battle plan. So if you're ready to stop dreaming and start building, let's get into it. Step 1, the pre-law foundation. This is your 4-year undergraduate degree, and it's where the first and most common myth about becoming a lawyer lives. The myth is that you need to major in pre-law or political science. Let me be crystal clear. Law schools do not care what your major is. In fact, declaring pre-law can sometimes be a red flag. It tells them you're following a cookie-cutter path without any real unique passion. They see thousands of political science majors every single year. You want to stand out, not blend in. So what do they actually care about? 2 things: your grades and the skills you can prove you have. That's it. They are looking for evidence that you can handle the crushing workload and intellectual rigor of law school. They want to see that you can think critically, read dense material, and most importantly, write with devastating clarity and precision. A legal career is built on the written word. Your arguments, your contracts, your motions, they are all constructed with language. If you can't write well, you are dead in the water. This means your strategy for choosing a major should be twofold. First, pick something you are genuinely passionate about. Why? Because you are more likely to get a high GPA in a subject that fascinates you. You'll go the extra mile, you'll enjoy the work, and your grades will reflect that. And your GPA is not just a number. It is the first filter that admissions committees use to cut down the applicant pool. A low GPA is the fastest way to get your application thrown into the trash without a second look. Second, choose a major that forces you to read, write, and think. This is where you build your arsenal of skills. Think about majors like philosophy. Philosophy is basically law school boot camp. It teaches you formal logic, how to construct a bulletproof argument from the ground up, and how to deconstruct someone else's argument to find its fatal flaw. These are the exact skills you'll use every single day as a law student and as a lawyer. Consider majors like history or English. These are reading and writing intensive fields. You'll spend 4 years analyzing complex texts, synthesizing information from multiple sources, and crafting persuasive essays. You'll learn how to build a narrative and support it with evidence, which is the very definition of legal practice. Or go in a completely different direction. A STEM major like engineering, computer science, or biology can be a massive advantage. Why? Because it proves you have elite analytical and quantitative reasoning skills. The legal world is desperate for lawyers who can understand complex technical information, especially in fields like patent law, intellectual property, or environmental law. A STEM background makes you a rare and valuable commodity. It screams to admissions committees that you are not just another liberal arts graduate. You are a precise, logical thinker who can handle complex systems. The key takeaway is this: your major is a tool to achieve two goals: a stellar GPA and a set of demonstrable skills. Don't just follow the herd into political science unless you truly love it. Choose your own path, one that builds your intellectual firepower and gets you that A. Now let's talk more about that GPA, because it's even more important than you think. The Law School Admission Council, or LSAC, will take every single grade you've ever earned from every college you've ever attended and recalculate your cumulative GPA down to the 100th of a point. That C- in basket weaving you took at a community college one summer? It counts. That F in calculus from your freshman year before you switched majors? It's in there. This LSAC GPA is the number that schools will see, and it is a hard, cold metric. However, there is a silver lining. Admissions committees also look at your GPA trend. If you had a disastrous freshman year but then showed a consistent, upward trajectory with straight A's in your junior and senior years, that tells a powerful story. It shows maturity, resilience, and the ability to overcome adversity. It shows you figured it out. So if you're starting out with a low GPA, don't panic. Double down. Show them you have the grit to turn it around. But your undergraduate career isn't just about what happens in the classroom. The second piece of the puzzle is building your personal narrative through your extracurricular activities. And just like with your major, the key is not to do what you think you're supposed to do. It's about quality over quantity. Law schools aren't impressed by a long list of clubs you were passively a member of. They are impressed by commitment, leadership, and impact. Joining the debate team or mock trial is an obvious choice, and for good reason. It's a direct demonstration of your interest in advocacy and your ability to think on your feet. But it's far from the only option. Did you run a major fundraising campaign for a charity? That shows project management and persuasive skills. Did you work 30 hours a week at a demanding job to pay for school? That shows time management, responsibility, and a powerful work ethic that many other applicants won't have. Did you start your own business, even if it failed? That shows initiative, ambition, and a willingness to take risks. Think of your application as a story. Your transcript is the plot, but your extracurriculars are the character development. They are what make you a three-dimensional human being instead of just a number. They should connect to a larger theme. Are you passionate about social justice? Your volunteer work at a legal aid clinic or a human rights organization should reflect that. Are you interested in business law? Your experience in a student investment club or an internship at a startup will be far more compelling than joining the pre-law society, because you thought you had to. Your goal during these 4 years is to build a compelling case for yourself. Your GPA and the skills from your major are your primary evidence. Your extracurriculars are your supporting arguments. You are the lawyer, and the admissions committee is the jury. By the time you graduate, you need to have an airtight case that proves you have the intellectual horsepower, the work ethic, and the unique passion to not only succeed in law school, but to become an outstanding lawyer. Everything you do, every class you take, every club you join should be a deliberate step in building that case. Because you could have a perfect 4.0 from Harvard, but if you bomb the next critical step we're about to discuss, none of it will matter. That step is the single biggest gatekeeper to law school. An exam so notoriously difficult, it has its own cottage industry of prep courses and tutors. It's the great equalizer that can make or break your entire legal future before it even begins. I'm talking about the LSAT, the Law School Admission Test. 3.5 hours of pure, unadulterated mental combat. This isn't a test about law. You won't be asked about contracts or torts. You won't be asked to cite a single case. In fact, knowing the law is completely irrelevant. The LSAT isn't a test of knowledge. It's a test of thinking. It's designed to figure out one thing and one thing only. Do you have the raw cognitive horsepower to survive the first year of law school? Admissions committees are obsessed with this test. Why? Because for decades, it has been the single best predictor of first-year law school grades. Better than your GPA, better than your letters of recommendation, better than your personal essay. A 4-year grade point average shows diligence and work ethic over time. The LSAT in their eyes shows what your brain can do right now under immense pressure. It's a snapshot of your potential. And in the hyper-competitive world of law school admissions, that snapshot is often weighed just as heavily, if not more heavily, than the entire 4-year movie of your undergraduate career. A high LSAT score can make a mediocre GPA look like a fluke. A low LSAT score can make a perfect 4.0 look like you just went to an easy school. It is the great equalizer. and the great executioner. So what is this beast, really? The scored portion of the test is broken down into 3 distinct sections, and you'll do at least 4 of them because one is an unscored experimental section used to test future questions. You won't know which one is experimental, so you have to treat every single section like it's the one that determines your fate. First, there's logical reasoning. This is the core of the exam, making up half of your total score. You'll get 2 of these sections. Each one presents you with a series of short paragraphs, little arguments, and your job is to dissect them. You'll be asked to find the flaw in the argument, to identify the assumption the author is making, or to find a statement that would strengthen or weaken the conclusion. This is the section that trains you to think like a lawyer. Imagine a witness on the stand says, "The witness who saw the getaway car said it was blue. My neighbor owns a blue car. Therefore my neighbor must be the getaway driver." Your brain, the LSAT trained brain, immediately fires off a dozen questions. Was that the only blue car in the city? Did the witness get a good look? Does the witness have a reason to lie? Is there an alternative explanation? Logical reasoning isn't about finding the right answer from a list of facts you've memorized. It's about surgically dismantling an argument and exposing its weaknesses. It's intellectual demolition. Then comes the section that strikes fear into the hearts of aspiring lawyers everywhere. Analytical reasoning, better known as logic games. This is the most alien part of the test. It's a pure test of abstract reasoning. You're given a set of rules and a set of variables. For example, 7 diplomats are being seated at a round table. Diplomat A cannot sit next to Diplomat B. If Diplomat C sits in chair 1, then Diplomat D must sit in chair 4. Diplomat E must sit next to either F or G, but not both. And from this web of constraints, you have to deduce with absolute certainty what could be true and what must be true. It's like a Sudoku puzzle designed by a demon. There is no real-world equivalent to a logic game. You can't talk your way through it. You can't use outside knowledge. It's just you, a pencil, and a set of rules. Your job is to build a perfect, airtight diagram of all the possibilities and then answer questions based on your creation. Many people hit logic games and think, "This is impossible. I'm not smart enough for this." But here's the secret. It has nothing to do with being smart. It's about learning a system. It's the most learnable section on the entire test. Once you crack the code, once you learn how to diagram the different types of games, it goes from being a nightmare to being, well, almost fun. It's a puzzle, and for those who master it, it's where they can rack up the most points the fastest. Finally, there's reading comprehension. And you might think, phew, I can read. I've been doing that my whole life. But this is reading comprehension on steroids. You'll be presented with 4 incredibly dense, complex passages on topics you've likely never encountered. One might be about the migratory patterns of monarch butterflies, the next about the economic theory of John Maynard Keynes, a third on the nuances of string theory, and a fourth analyzing the structure of 12th century Russian poetry. The test makers choose these obscure topics on purpose. They don't want you to have any prior knowledge. The goal is to see if you can, in just a few minutes, digest a massive amount of unfamiliar information, understand the author's tone, structure, and main point, and then make complex inferences based solely on the text provided. It's a test of your ability to become a temporary expert on anything, immediately. So why this bizarre combination of skills? Because believe it or not, this is what lawyers do every single day. Logical reasoning is the skill of finding the loophole in a contract or punching a hole in the opposing counsel's argument in court. Reading comprehension is the ability to wade through 1,000 pages of technical documents for a patent case and find the one sentence that wins it all. And logic games? That abstract, weird puzzle section? That's the skill of managing a complex case with multiple clients, conflicting deadlines, and a web of interconnected legal rules. It's about keeping a dozen moving parts perfectly organized in your head. The test is scored on a scale from 120 to 180. A 151 is roughly the 50th percentile, the average score. But in the world of law school, average doesn't get you very far. To get into a top 50 law school, you're generally looking for a score in the low 160s. To crack the top 14 schools, the legendary T14, which includes places like Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, you need to be pushing 170 or higher. A 173 is the 99th percentile. Think about that. The difference between a 168 and a 172 isn't 4 points. It's the difference between a fantastic scholarship at a state university and a seat at a school that produces Supreme Court justices. Every single point matters. This is why a billion-dollar test prep industry exists. People don't just walk in and take the LSAT. They prepare for it like it's an Olympic event. The standard advice is to study for 3 to 6 months, often treating it like a full-time job. You'll buy books thicker than a phone book. You'll sign up for courses that cost thousands of dollars. You'll take dozens and dozens of full-length, timed practice exams until the format is burned into your soul. You'll learn to identify the 17 different types of flaws in a logical reasoning question. You'll learn the difference between a linear sequencing game and a grouping game. You'll learn that the most powerful word in reading comprehension is "but," because it signals a change in the author's direction. Here is the single most important thing to understand about this entire process. The LSAT is not an IQ test. It does not measure your intelligence or your worth as a person. It measures one thing: how good you are at taking the LSAT. It is a test of learned skills. You can get better, dramatically better. The person who scores a 150 on their first diagnostic test can absolutely become the person who scores a 175 on test day. It requires a mindset shift. You have to stop seeing it as a measure of your innate ability and start seeing it as a video game. You learn the rules, you identify the patterns, and you practice the moves until they become muscle memory. Once you've endured the crucible and gotten your score, that number becomes the second critical data point in your application, right next to your GPA. These two numbers, GPA and LSAT, form your academic index. They are the first thing an admissions officer will see, and for many schools, they will determine whether your application gets a serious read or is tossed into the maybe pile or worse. But they aren't everything. They are the gatekeepers, but they don't tell your whole story. To get past the numbers, you need to give them a reason to pick you. You need to craft a narrative that transforms you from a set of statistics into a living, breathing person they want to have in their classroom. And that's where the art of the application truly begins. So how do you do that? How do you build that narrative? You treat your entire application not as a collection of documents, but as your very first legal case. The case is titled, "The People versus the Admissions Committee," and you are arguing for the admission of your client yourself. Every single piece of paper you submit is an exhibit, a piece of evidence, or a testimony in your favor. And the most important document, your opening statement to the jury, is your personal statement. Let's be brutally honest. Most personal statements are terrible. They are boring. They are a laundry list of accomplishments rehashed from the resume. Or they are filled with cliches that make an admissions officer's eyes glaze over. If you write, "Ever since I was a child, I've loved to argue," or "I was inspired to go to law school by watching Suits," you've already lost. They've read that essay 1,000 times. Your job is not to list what you've done. Your job is to tell them why it matters. Your job is to connect the dots of your life and draw a straight line pointing directly to their law school. The single biggest mistake applicants make is trying to tell their entire life story. You have 2 pages. 2. You can't tell your whole story. You have to tell one story. The most powerful personal statements isolate a single defining experience and unpack it. They show, they don't just tell. Don't write, "Working at the nonprofit taught me the importance of advocacy." That's telling. Instead, write about a specific person you helped. Tell us about Mrs. Rodriguez, who was facing eviction. Describe the worn-out folder of documents she brought in, the fear in her eyes, the bureaucratic maze you helped her navigate. Describe the moment you found the loophole in the landlord's paperwork, the feeling in your chest when you delivered the good news. Through that one detailed story, you have shown the admissions committee that you understand advocacy, that you have empathy, that you are resilient, and that you are motivated by something real. You haven't just said it, you've made them feel it. Your personal statement is your answer to the silent question every admissions officer is asking. Why? Why law? Why now? Why you? And your story has to be the answer. Maybe it was a moment in a science lab where you realized the ethical regulations were more fascinating than the experiments themselves. Maybe it was starting a small business and getting tangled in contract law. Maybe it was seeing an injustice in your community and feeling utterly powerless to fix it. Find that moment, that turning point. That's the heart of your essay. That's your narrative. And remember, this is a personal statement. It has to sound like you. Read it out loud. Does it sound like a real human being talking? Or does it sound like a corporate memo written by a robot? If it's the latter, start over. Be vulnerable. Be authentic. Let your personality come through. They're not just admitting a GPA and an LSAT score. They're admitting a person who will sit in their classrooms, contribute to discussions, and one day represent their institution as an alumnus. They want to know who that person is. Now, once you've written your powerful opening argument, your personal statement, you need to call your witnesses. These are your letters of recommendation. And just like in a trial, the quality of your witnesses is paramount. You don't want someone on the stand who just says, "Yeah, he's a good guy." You want an expert witness who can provide specific, credible testimony about your abilities. This is not the time to be starstruck. A generic one-paragraph letter from a famous judge or a state senator who you met once at a fundraiser is worthless. In fact, it can even hurt you because it shows poor judgment. What you want is a glowing, detailed, 2-page letter from a professor whose class you aced, who you spoke with after class, who saw you lead a study group, and who can speak with genuine enthusiasm about your intellectual curiosity, your writing skills, and your analytical abilities. You need to think about your recommender strategically. Don't get 3 letters that all say the same thing. Curate your witnesses. Get one professor, preferably from a challenging upper-level course in your major, to speak to your academic prowess. Get a second recommender from a different context, maybe a boss from an internship or a long-term job, who can speak to your work ethic, your maturity, and your professional skills. Together, they paint a multi-dimensional picture of you as a candidate. And please do not just email a professor and say, "Hey, can you write me a letter of rec?" You are making a huge ask of a busy person. You need to make their job as easy as possible. Schedule a meeting with them. When you go, bring a folder. Inside that folder should be your resume, your draft personal statement, a copy of your transcript with their class highlighted, and a 1-page brag sheet. On that sheet, remind them of the specific projects or papers you did for their class. Mention a specific comment they made that stuck with you. List your other accomplishments. Give them the ammunition they need to write a fantastic specific letter. By preparing this packet, you're not just helping them. You're showing them that you are organized, professional, and serious about this process. All qualities of a great future lawyer. Finally, let's talk about the rest of your case file, the exhibits. These are your resume and, if necessary, any addenda. Your resume is the factual backbone of your story. It's the evidence that proves the claims you made in your personal statement. If you wrote about helping Mrs. Rodriguez, your resume better have that legal aid clinic listed. Keep it to 1 page. No exceptions. Use action verbs. Quantify your accomplishments whenever possible. Don't just say you managed a team. Say you managed a team of 5 to increase fundraising by 15%. It's clean, professional, and to the point. The addendum is a tool to be used sparingly and surgically. It is not a place for excuses. It is a place for brief, factual explanations. Did your GPA dip 1 semester because you had a serious medical issue? An addendum is the place to state that. A short paragraph. My grades in the spring of 2022 were impacted by a medical emergency that has since been fully resolved. That's it. No drama, no long story. Just the facts. It's for things like a withdrawal on your transcript, a leave of absence, or a disciplinary issue. It is not for explaining why you got a B- in chemistry because you didn't like the professor. Use it only when there's a genuine anomaly in your record that might raise a red flag without context. So you have your case file. You have a compelling opening argument in your personal statement. You have credible, prepared witnesses in your recommenders. And you have clear, organized evidence in your resume. You've transformed yourself from a number into a narrative. You've given the admissions committee a story to believe in. You've done everything in your power to control how they see you. Now comes the hard part. Where do you send this meticulously crafted application? The school you choose is one of the most significant financial and professional decisions of your entire life. It's not just about getting into a law school. It's about getting into the right law school for you. And the way most people approach this decision is completely, utterly wrong. They look at the rankings and nothing else. A mistake that can cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars and set their career on a path they never intended. Let's talk about those rankings. The U.S. News & World Report list is, without a doubt, the single most influential document in legal education. It dictates school policies, influences hiring, and most importantly, it preys on the anxiety of thousands of applicants like you every single year. And here's the dirty secret. For the individual applicant, for you, it is a deeply flawed tool. It's like choosing a spouse based on their parents' net worth and the square footage of their house. It tells you something, but it tells you almost nothing about what your life will actually be like day to day. The rankings are a formula. They measure things like peer assessment scores, what professors at other schools think, faculty resources, and the median LSAT scores of the incoming class. Do you know what they don't measure? Teaching quality, student mental health, the the strength of the alumni network in the city you actually want to live in, whether the school will prepare you for the reality of being a solo practitioner or a public defender, versus just being a cog in a massive corporate machine. Relying solely on the rankings is outsourcing the most important decision of your career to a magazine's algorithm. So, if not the rankings, then what? You need a new framework. A personal algorithm that puts you at the center of the equation. I call it the 3 C's: cost, career, and culture. Get these 3 right, and you will find the perfect law school for you, whether it's number 5, number 55, or number 155 on some list. Let's start with the biggest, scariest C: cost. We have to talk about money, and we have to be brutally honest about it. The sticker price for a top private law school is now cresting over $70,000 a year. Just for tuition. Add in fees, books, and the cost of living in a city like New York or Chicago, and you are easily looking at $100,000 per year. That's $300,000 for the degree. Let me say that again. $300,000. That number is so large it feels fake. But the monthly loan payment that comes with it is very, very real. A $300,000 debt load at current interest rates translates to a payment of over $3,500 a month. Every month. For a decade or more. That is more than most people's mortgage. That single payment will dictate where you can live, what car you can drive, when you can start a family, and most critically, what job you can afford to take. You might have a burning passion for environmental law or working with domestic violence survivors, but when that $3,500 bill comes due, that $200,000 a year corporate law job starts to look less like a choice and more like a necessity. The debt becomes a golden cage, forcing you onto a career path you may grow to hate. So, your first filter should be cost. Look at the sticker price, but more importantly, look at the net price. Are you a strong candidate who might get a significant scholarship? A full ride to the 50th ranked school is almost always a better financial decision than paying full price at the 15th ranked school. Are you applying to public, in-state universities? The value proposition of a great state university, where tuition might be a third of a private school's, is astronomical. Don't just look at the debt you'll graduate with. Calculate the monthly payment. Stare at that number. Ask yourself, what kind of life can I build around this payment? This single exercise will be more illuminating than staring at the rankings for 100 hours. Okay, the second C: career. This is about outcomes. Where do a school's graduates actually work? Every law school is required to publish detailed employment statistics. You need to find them, download them, and study them like you're preparing for a final exam. Do not just look at the top-line number like 95% employed within 10 months of graduation. That number is almost meaningless. The devil is in the details. What percentage of that 95% are in full-time, long-term jobs that actually require bar passage? Some schools will famously plump their numbers by hiring their own unemployed graduates for temporary, part-time research positions. It's a classic trick. You need to look deeper. What percentage went to law firms? Of those, how many went to big law firms of over 500 attorneys, the ones that pay those massive starting salaries? And how many went to small firms of 2 to 10 attorneys? Those are wildly different career paths with wildly different salaries and lifestyles. What percentage went into government? Public interest? How many secured prestigious federal judicial clerkships? The answers to these questions paint a picture of the school's true identity. Some schools are unapologetic big law factories. If your dream is to work on Wall Street, that's fantastic. Go there. Other schools have incredible pipelines into the Department of Justice or renowned public interest organizations. If that's your dream, that's your school. And critically, where geographically do these graduates end up? Law is still a very regional profession. If you go to a great but not nationally known law school in Ohio, you will find that the judges, the partners at the top firms, and the district attorneys all across Ohio are fellow alumni. That school owns the regional market. But if you take that same degree to California, it might as well be written in a foreign language. Conversely, a degree from a top 14 national school like Harvard or Stanford is portable. It opens doors anywhere, but you pay a steep price for that portability. So ask yourself honestly, where do I want to build my life? If you know you want to practice in Texas, a school like the University of Texas or SMU might serve you far better, and for far less money than a higher-ranked school in the Northeast. Match the school's career footprint to your own ambition. Finally, the third C: culture. This is the most overlooked and arguably the most important factor for your actual happiness. You will be spending 3 years of your life in this place. These people, your classmates and professors, will become your network for the next 40 years. The environment matters. Is the school known for a supportive, collaborative atmosphere? Or is it a cutthroat, sharp elbows kind of place where students hide library books from each other? What is the school's personality? Is it a wonky academic paradise where debating legal theory is the main pastime? Is it a practical, get your hands dirty kind of place with amazing legal clinics that get you into a courtroom in your second year? Does the school have a thriving public interest community? Or will you be the lone weirdo who doesn't want to do corporate law? You can't find this on a spreadsheet. You find it by talking to people. Reach out to current students on LinkedIn or Reddit. Ask them what they love and what they hate. Ask them what surprised them about the school. If you can visit, walk the halls, sit in on a class. Do you feel a sense of excitement and belonging, or a sense of dread? Your gut feeling is data. Trust it. Spending 3 years in a culture that clashes with your personality is a recipe for misery, no matter how prestigious the name on your diploma. So there it is. Cost, career, and culture. Your personal matrix for making the right choice. Forget the national beauty pageant. Build a short list of schools based on these 3 factors. Have your dream schools, sure, but also your target schools where your stats are a good match, and your safety schools where you're a strong candidate for a major scholarship. This list, built on a foundation of self-reflection and deep research, is 1,000 times more valuable than any ranking. It's a list of places where you won't just survive law school, you'll thrive. Now you have your list. You know where you want to go. The next step is convincing them to want you. This means forging your raw materials, your GPA, your LSAT score, your work experience, your life story, into a compelling, irresistible application package. And the heart of that package, the single document that can make a mediocre application sing or a great application fall flat, is the personal statement. It's time to tell your story. But what story do you tell? This isn't a fairy tale, and it's not your autobiography. The single biggest mistake applicants make is thinking the personal statement is a resume in paragraph form. It's not. First, I interned at a senator's office, then I founded the Pre-Law Society, and then I achieved a high GPA. The admissions committee can read that on your resume. They already know the what. The personal statement is your one and only chance to tell them the why. Why did you do those things? What drove you? What changed you? What fire was lit inside you that makes a grueling 3-year, $250,000 investment in a law degree the only logical next step in your life? Your personal statement has one job: to answer the unasked question that every single admissions officer is thinking as they pick up your file. And that question is, so what? Why should we care? Your GPA is a number. Your LSAT is a number. They are cold, hard data points. Your personal statement is your opportunity to become a human being. A compelling 3-dimensional person they feel like they know they're rooting for, and they absolutely want to have walking the halls of their law school. So let's scrap the idea of listing accomplishments. Instead, I want you to think of your personal statement as an origin story. Every great hero has one. It's the moment of transformation, the event that took them from being a normal person and set them on an extraordinary path. Your path is law. We need to find the moment your journey began. It's probably not the day you were born, and it's almost never. I've wanted to be a lawyer ever since I was 5 years old watching Matlock. Admissions committees have read that 1,000 times. It's generic. It lacks depth. Your story needs to be specific, personal, and reflective. It needs to show growth. So let's brainstorm. Forget about what you think a law school wants to hear. For a moment, just think about your own life. When was a time you encountered a problem you couldn't solve? A system that seemed broken? An injustice, big or small, that you witnessed and it just stuck with you? Maybe you worked a summer job in a restaurant and saw how your coworkers, who didn't speak English fluently, were being taken advantage of by the manager. You saw the rules, the contracts, the power imbalance, and you felt a surge of something. Anger? A desire for fairness? That's a story. Or maybe it was more intellectual. Maybe you were a computer science major working on an algorithm for a social media company, and you started grappling with the immense privacy implications. You realized the code you were writing had real-world consequences, governed by a complex web of laws you didn't understand. You saw a gap between technology and regulation, and felt a pull to bridge it. That's a story. Maybe a family member went through a messy divorce, or a difficult immigration process, or a dispute with a landlord. You were on the sidelines watching them navigate a world of confusing, intimidating documents and procedures, and you felt powerless. But in that powerlessness you found a purpose. You thought, Someone needs to be able to understand this. Someone needs to be able to fight for people in this situation. That is a powerful story. Notice the theme here? The best personal statements are not about success. They are often about struggle, conflict, or confusion. They show you wrestling with a complex problem and realizing that law is the tool you need to solve it. It's a narrative of discovery. The structure of this story is simple. You have a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning is the hook. It's the first paragraph, the first sentence, and it has to grab the reader by the collar. Do not start with, "I am applying to Harvard Law School because of its commitment to excellence." It's a guaranteed way to put them to sleep. Start in the middle of the action. Start with the moment of conflict. Instead of saying, "I learned the importance of advocacy working at a restaurant," try something like, "The grease-stained overtime slips sat in a stack on the corner of my desk, a silent testament to a dozen stolen hours." See the difference? One tells, the other shows. Creates an image. It raises a question. It makes me want to read the next sentence. Your opening paragraph should establish the scene and the central tension of your story. The middle of your essay, the body paragraphs, is where you develop this story. This is where you walk the admissions committee through the experience. You show them what you did, what you thought, and how it changed you. This is the show, don't tell principle in action. Don't tell them you're hardworking. Describe the all-nighters you pulled to decipher a local ordinance to help your neighborhood association. Don't tell them you're compassionate. Describe the conversation you had with a non-English speaking coworker, using a translation app on your phone to explain their rights. Use sensory details. What did it look like? What did it sound like? How did you feel? This is what makes you a real person, not just an applicant file. Crucially, this middle section must build towards a turning point. The climax of your story. This is the aha moment. It's the point where you realize that your passion, your skills, and your goals all converge on one path. The law. It's the moment you transition from "this is a problem" to "I want to be part of the solution, and law is how I'll do it." This connection cannot be forced. It has to flow naturally from the story you've told. If you wrote about the restaurant workers, the turning point is realizing that your outrage, while justified, was not enough. You needed a framework, a language of power, a set of rules to enforce fairness. You needed law. Finally, the conclusion. Your conclusion is not a summary. Do not just repeat what you've already said. The conclusion looks forward. It answers the final parts of the why question. Why this law school? And what will you do with this degree? This is where you connect your personal journey to the specific institution. Do your homework. Find a specific clinic, a journal, a professor, or a program at that law school that directly relates to the story you just told. Professor Smith's work on employment law for immigrant communities is why I am so drawn to your school. I want to learn from her, contribute to your employment law clinic, and use my background to serve clients just like my former coworkers. This shows you're not just carpet bombing the top 20 schools with a generic essay. It shows you have a plan. You see yourself at their institution. And your final sentences should be a powerful vision of your future. You're not just a student applying for a seat. You are a future lawyer, a future colleague, a future agent of change. Leave them with a clear, compelling image of the person you will become with their degree in your hand. Your personal statement should be roughly 2 pages, double-spaced. That's it. Around 500 to 650 words to change your life. Every single word must earn its place. Once you have a draft, read it out loud. Does it sound like you? Does it flow? Is it compelling? Then give it to people you trust to read. A professor, a mentor, a pre-law advisor. Ask them, after reading this, what 3 words would you use to describe me? If their words are things like driven, empathetic, analytical, resilient, then you've done your job. If they say confused or arrogant or boring, it's time to get back to work. This statement is your soul on a page. It's the single most important qualitative factor in your application. But even the world's greatest personal statement can't stand on its own. It needs supporting evidence. It needs people who can vouch for your character, your intellect, and your potential. It needs powerful, persuasive advocates in your corner. And that brings us to the next critical piece of your application puzzle, your letters of recommendation. These letters are the one part of your application you don't write yourself. And for that very reason, they are one of the most powerful. Think about it. The admissions committee has your numbers, your GPA, your LSAT score. They have your story in your own words from your personal statement. But who are you when you're not the one telling the story? Who are you in the classroom, in the lab, in the office? That's the question a letter of recommendation answers. It's the outside validation, the third-party verification that you are who you say you are. A great letter can make a borderline application a clear admit. A mediocre letter can make a stellar application feel hollow and unconvincing. It is the single greatest tiebreaker in the law school admissions game. Most applicants, however, treat this crucial step like an afterthought. They send a quick, nervous email to a professor from a 300-person lecture they took 2 years ago, crossing their fingers and hoping for the best. This is like building a multi-million-dollar race car and then putting bargain bin tires on it. It completely undermines all the hard work you've already done. You cannot be passive in this process. You must be the architect of your own advocacy. You need to strategically select your recommenders and, more importantly, empower them to write a letter so compelling it practically leaps off the page. So, who do you ask? The single biggest mistake students make is chasing titles. They think a letter from a famous department head, a local judge, or even a state senator they interned for will carry the most weight. This is fundamentally wrong. An admissions officer doesn't care about the title of the person writing your letter. They care about the content of the letter. And the only person who can write a compelling letter is someone who knows you and knows you well. A vague, form letter from a big-shot professor that says, "Sarah was a good student in my large lecture class and received an A," is a death sentence. It's a wasted opportunity. It tells the committee absolutely nothing that your transcript doesn't already say. Contrast that with a letter from a graduate teaching assistant who led your 15-person weekly discussion section. That TA saw you argue, debate, and lead discussions every single week. They can write. Sarah wasn't just a participant, she was a leader. I'll never forget the day we were discussing Marbury versus Madison, and she offered a counter-argument so nuanced and well-researched that it genuinely challenged my own understanding of the case. She has a natural gift for seeing both sides of an issue and articulating her position with clarity and force. Who do you think the admissions committee wants in their classroom? The student who got an A? Or the student who challenges the professor? The best recommenders are almost always full-time professors, preferably from upper-level seminar-style classes where they got to see you think, write, and speak on a consistent basis. You need at least 2 strong academic recommenders. Ideally, these are professors in your major who can speak to your analytical and writing abilities, the core skills of a lawyer. If you've done research with a professor or worked as their research assistant, that is pure gold. They've seen your work ethic, your intellectual curiosity, and your ability to handle complex material up close. That is the perspective that admissions committees crave. Once you've identified your potential recommenders, your A team, the next step is how you ask. And this is where you go from being a passive applicant to a strategic operator. You never ever want to just ask, "Will you write me a letter of recommendation?" The question is too open-ended. Puts the professor on the spot. Instead, you should ask, "Do you feel you know me and my work well enough to write a strong, detailed letter of recommendation for my law school applications?" This gives them an easy, respectable way to say no. If they hesitate or say they don't think they can write a strong letter, thank them for their time and move on. A lukewarm letter can do more harm than no letter at all. But let's say they enthusiastically agree. Your job is not done. In fact, it's just beginning. You now need to give them the ammunition to write that killer letter. You need to assemble what I call a recommenders packet. This is a simple, organized folder, digital or physical, that makes their job as easy as possible. Remember, your professor is incredibly busy. They might be writing dozens of these letters. The easier you make it for them, the better your letter will be. So what goes in this packet? First, a clean, updated copy of your resume or CV. Second, a near-final draft of your personal statement. This is critical. It gives them context for your journey, your motivations, and the story you're telling about yourself. It helps them tailor their letter to complement your narrative. Third, include your unofficial transcript, and maybe even highlight the course or courses you took with them. Fourth, include a simple, organized list of all the schools you're applying to, along with their deadlines. This helps them manage their own schedule. And now for the most important part of the packet, a cheat sheet or a reminder sheet. This is a one-page document where you gently remind them of your specific contributions. You are not writing the letter for them. You are jogging their memory. You can use bullet points like, "As a reminder, in your constitutional law seminar, I wrote my final research paper on the Commerce Clause, arguing for a more limited interpretation, which you noted was a bold and well-defended thesis in your comments." Or, "I particularly enjoyed our in-class debate on free speech, where I argued the position for the university. You can also list a few key skills you hope they might touch on, like your research abilities, your writing skills, or your contributions to class discussions. This isn't arrogant. It's helpful. You are providing them with concrete, specific anecdotes. Specificity is the difference between a good letter and a great one. A great letter is filled with stories and examples, not just generic praise. Your packet helps them find those stories. Think about the timeline. You need to give your recommenders an absolute minimum of 1 month's notice, but 6 to 8 weeks is far better. Ask them at the beginning of the fall semester of your senior year. This shows foresight and respect for their time. After you've given them the packet, the system for submitting letters is almost entirely electronic now, through the Law School Admission Council. You'll enter your recommender's contact information, and LSAC will email them a link to upload their letter. It's seamless. One final crucial point on this. You will be asked whether you want to waive your right to see the letter of recommendation. The answer is always unequivocally yes. You must waive the right. It's a federal law called FERPA that gives you the right to access your educational records. But in this context, if you choose not to waive your right, it sends a massive red flag to the admissions committee. It signals that you don't fully trust your recommender, and it implies that the letter they wrote might not be entirely candid, because they knew you would be reading it. A confidential letter carries infinitely more weight. Waiving your right is a sign of confidence, and it is the standard expected practice. Your letters of recommendation are your character witnesses. They are the voices that corroborate your story and add a dimension of credibility that you simply cannot create on your own. You've spent years building relationships with these professors, doing the work, and proving your intellectual mettle. Now is the time to call on those relationships. Don't just ask for a letter. Orchestrate a symphony of advocacy on your behalf. So, you've conquered the LSAT. You've polished your GPA. You've poured your soul into your personal statement. And you've curated a team of powerful advocates to write your letters. Your entire application dossier is almost complete. It's a powerful weapon. But a weapon is useless if you don't know where to aim it. Now comes the grand strategy, deciding which law schools to target, which to consider a reach, and which are your safeties. This isn't just about rankings. It's about finding the right fit, the right culture, and the right price tag. And that process of building your school list is one of the most consequential decisions you'll make on this entire journey. But a perfectly curated list of schools is useless without an application that can break through the noise. Once you have your targets, you have to build the weapon that will hit them. That weapon is your application packet. And the warhead, the single most important part of that weapon system, is your personal statement. Forget your GPA for a second. Forget your LSAT score. Those are just numbers on a page. Your personal statement is the only part of the application where the admissions committee gets to hear your voice. It's where you transform from a set of statistics into a living, breathing human being they can imagine walking the halls of their law school. So what is it? It's a short essay, typically 2 pages, double-spaced, that answers the silent, overarching question of the entire application. Why you? And why law? This is not a resume in paragraph form. Do not, under any circumstances, just list your accomplishments. This is a story. It's your origin story. It needs a narrative arc. It needs to show growth. It needs to connect your past experiences to your future legal ambitions. The best personal statements often focus on a single pivotal experience. Maybe it was mediating a dispute between your parents as a child. Maybe it was working at a nonprofit and seeing the limits of goodwill without legal power. Maybe it was a time you were wronged and felt powerless, or a time you stood up for someone else. Pick a moment, a theme, and build your story around it. Show, don't just tell. Don't say, I am a resilient person. Tell a story about a time you faced a massive setback, how you felt, what you did, and how you clawed your way back, emerging stronger. The key is to be authentic. Admissions officers read thousands of these. They can smell a fake, a cliché, or a manufactured story a mile away. Don't write what you think they want to hear. Don't write about how you've wanted to be a lawyer since you were 6 and watched To Kill a Mockingbird. Write your truth. If your path to law was messy, unconventional, or born from failure, own it. That's far more compelling than a polished but soulless essay. And for the love of all that is holy, proofread it. Then have 3 other people proofread it. A single typo can signal carelessness, and in a profession that lives and dies by the precision of its language, that's a death sentence. Next up in your application arsenal are your letters of recommendation, or LORs. These are critical because they provide third-party validation of who you are. You can say you're a brilliant writer and a keen legal mind, but it's 1,000 times more powerful when a respected professor says it for you. Who should you ask? The mistake most people make is aiming for fame over familiarity. A generic one-paragraph letter from the famous department head, whose giant lecture class you got an A in, is worthless. You want to ask 2, sometimes 3 professors who know you well. The professor from the small seminar class where you actively participated. The professor whose office hours you went to, who supervised your senior thesis, who saw you grapple with complex ideas. They can write with specific anecdotes, which is what makes a letter powerful. If you've been out of school for a while, it's perfectly acceptable to ask an employer, especially a direct supervisor who can speak to your work ethic, your analytical skills, and your professionalism. The key is to ask early. Give your recommenders at least a month's notice. And when you ask, you make their job easy. You provide them with what I call a brag packet. This includes your draft personal statement, your resume, a list of the schools you're applying to and their deadlines, and a short write-up reminding them of the specific work you did in their class and what you learned. This little bit of extra work on your part makes the difference between a generic letter and a glowing, detailed endorsement. And when the application portal asks if you want to waive your right to see the letter, you click yes every single time, without hesitation. Waiving your right signals to the admissions committee that you trust your recommender completely, which in turn makes them trust the letter more. Not waiving it is a major red flag. Then there's your resume. This isn't the same resume you'd use to apply for a job. It's an academic resume. Its purpose is to provide a clean one-page snapshot of your life. Keep the formatting simple and professional. Use action verbs. Quantify your accomplishments whenever possible. Instead of helped organize a fundraiser, write co-organized a fundraiser that raised over $5,000 for local literacy programs. Highlight experiences that demonstrate skills relevant to law school. Research, writing, public speaking, leadership, and long-term commitment. Did you work a part-time job all through college? Include it. It shows time management and responsibility. Were you a college athlete? Include it. It shows discipline and teamwork. This is your chance to fill in the gaps and show them what you've been doing with your time. Now let's talk about a part of the application that causes a lot of anxiety: the addenda. An addendum is a short, optional essay that explains a potential red flag in your application. The most common types are for a low GPA, a significant discrepancy in LSAT scores, or a character and fitness issue. Let's be very clear. An addendum is not a place for excuses. It is a place for concise, factual explanations. For a GPA addendum, you don't write about how hard a class was. You write it if there was a specific documentable reason for a semester of poor grades, a serious illness, a family death, a major financial crisis. You state the facts, explain that your performance suffered as a result, and then point to your subsequent grades to show that the issue was an anomaly and that you recovered. Keep it short, professional, and to the point. For character and fitness, this is non-negotiable. You must disclose everything. That minor in possession charge from freshman year? Disclose it. The time you were put on academic probation? Disclose it. The bar's Character and Fitness Committee will do a background check that is more thorough than the FBI's. If they find something you didn't disclose on your law school application, you will not be admitted to the bar. Period. Your legal career will be over before it starts. So, in the addendum, you state exactly what happened, you take full responsibility, you express remorse, and you explain what you learned from the experience. Honesty and accountability are paramount. Lying by omission is an automatic deal breaker. Finally, many schools will have optional essays. Let me tell you a secret. They are not optional. If you are serious about a school, you must do the optional essay, especially the Why This Law School essay. This is your chance to prove you've done your homework and aren't just shotgunning applications. This is where you get specific. Don't just say, I am impressed by your excellent faculty. Name a professor and say, I am deeply interested in Professor Smith's research on intellectual property in the digital age, and I hope to take her seminar. Don't just say, your school has great clinical programs. Say, I am particularly drawn to your school's immigration justice clinic, as it aligns perfectly with my goal of working in refugee advocacy. This shows genuine interest. It tells the admissions committee that you aren't just another applicant. You are an applicant who has a specific, well-researched reason for wanting to be at their institution, and that you would be an engaged and contributing member of their community. Is the final piece of the puzzle, the last argument in your case file, that can tip the scales in your favor. And then one day it arrives. An email with a subject line that makes your heart stop. Or maybe a thick envelope in the mail, heavy with possibility. You've been accepted. The months, maybe years of grinding for your GPA, of staring at logic games until your eyes crossed, of pouring your soul into a personal statement, it all paid off. You're going to law school. The celebration is euphoric, a wave of relief and excitement. You did it. But as the confetti settles, a new, much more intimidating reality begins to creep in. You're not just trying to get into law school anymore. Now you have to survive it. Welcome to Step 4. Conquer law school. Forget everything you think you know about being a student. Your undergraduate experience where you could skim a chapter, cram the night before, and pull off an A-, that's over. Law school is a different beast entirely. It's a 3-year intellectual boot camp designed to fundamentally rewire your brain. It will break down the way you think, the way you read, and the way you argue, and then rebuild it all from the ground up in the image of a lawyer. The first year, universally known as 1L, is legendary for its difficulty. It's often called 1L hell, and for good reason. You'll walk into a cavernous lecture hall with 150 other brilliant, ambitious, and frankly terrified students. You're all starting from zero. It doesn't matter if you were a philosophy major or a chemical engineer. On day one, everyone is equally clueless. And your professor, a titan in their field, knows it. This is where you first encounter the infamous Socratic method. The professor won't just stand at a podium and lecture. Instead, they'll call on a student completely at random and begin a relentless barrage of questions about the day's reading. They'll pick apart your answers, challenge your assumptions, and push you into logical corners until you can't defend your position anymore. It's not about embarrassing you, it's about training you. It teaches you to think on your feet, to defend your reasoning against a hostile cross-examiner, and to never, ever make a statement you can't back up with facts and logic. But in the moment, with your heart pounding and 75 pairs of eyes on you, it feels like intellectual combat. Your only defense is to be ruthlessly prepared. And preparation means reading. So much reading. You'll be assigned dozens, sometimes hundreds of pages of dense, jargon-filled legal cases for every single class, every single night. These aren't textbook chapters that neatly summarize a topic. These are the raw, unedited opinions of judges from 100 years ago, written in archaic language about disputes you can barely comprehend. Your job is to dissect these cases to pull out the single essential thread of legal reasoning, the rule of law that decided the outcome. To manage this tidal wave of information, you'll learn to brief a case. This is your first essential survival skill. You'll use a framework, most often called IRAC, Issue, Rule, Application, Conclusion. What was the legal question the court had to decide? What was the rule of law they used to decide it? How did they apply that rule to the specific facts of the case? And what was the final outcome? Learning to brief cases is like learning to see the matrix. You start to filter out the noise and see the underlying code of the law. It's tedious, it's exhausting, but it's the only way to stay afloat. But here's the most brutal part of 1L year: the curve. In law school, your grade isn't determined by how well you know the material in a vacuum. It's determined by how well you know it compared to every other person in your class. Most law schools grade on a mandatory curve, meaning only a certain small percentage of students can get an A, a larger percentage will get a B, and so on. You could write a flawless final exam, a true masterpiece of legal analysis, but if 10 other people in your class wrote an even more flawless one, you're getting a B. It creates an environment of intense, palpable competition. You're all in it together, but you're also all directly competing for a finite number of top grades. And those 1L grades are everything. They determine your eligibility for prestigious honors like law review, and often dictate your chances of landing a top-tier summer job, which can lead to a full-time offer after graduation. The pressure is immense. Your entire grade for a semester-long class, all those nights of reading, all those terrifying Socratic method encounters, boils down to a single 3-hour exam at the very end. There are no quizzes, no midterms, no homework assignments to bolster your grade. It all comes down to one performance. To prepare for this, you'll create what becomes your law school Bible: the outline. Throughout the semester, you'll take the thousands of pages of cases and your hundreds of pages of class notes and synthesize them, condensing an entire subject like contracts or torts into a single logical 30 to 50-page document. Outlining isn't just studying. It's the act of creating the very tool you'll use to win the final battle. If you survive 1L year, the landscape changes. The second and third years, or 2L and 3L, are less about theoretical baptism by fire and more about specialization and practical skills. The pressure of the curve lessens slightly as you begin to find your path. You'll have the chance to join a journal, like the prestigious Law Review, where you'll spend countless hours editing academic articles and checking citations. A grueling but highly respected credential. Or maybe you'll find your voice in moot court or mock trial. This is where the theory you learned in 1L smacks into reality. In moot court, you'll write appellate briefs and argue a hypothetical case in front of a panel of judges, often real lawyers and judges from the community. In mock trial, you'll act as a trial attorney, delivering opening statements, examining witnesses, and making objections. This is where you stop just learning about the law and start doing it. It's the first time you put on the suit and feel, even for a moment, like a real lawyer. You'll also get to participate in clinics, which are the closest you'll get to actual practice while still in school. You might work in an immigration clinic, helping a family seek asylum, or a criminal defense clinic, representing indigent clients in court under the supervision of a professor. This is where the stakes become real. Your work is no longer for a grade. It's for a person whose life, liberty, or livelihood depends on your ability to apply what you've learned. It's terrifying, and it's the most meaningful work you will do in your 3 years. Through all of this, the competition, the stress, the exhaustion, you'll discover the strange paradox of law school. It is both an intensely competitive and a deeply collaborative environment. You'll form study groups that become your lifeline, friends with whom you'll spend late nights in the library, debating legal theories over cold pizza and too much coffee. These are the people who will understand the unique insanity you're going through. They will be your future colleagues, your professional network, and some of them your lifelong friends. Don't let the curve fool you into isolating yourself. The relationships you build are just as important as the grades you earn. Finally, after 3 years that feel like a decade, you'll walk across the stage. You'll wear a ridiculous floppy hat and a gown with bell sleeves, and someone will hand you a diploma that cost a fortune in both money and sanity. You have done it. You have conquered law school. You have earned the title Juris Doctor. It's a moment of pure triumph. But as you stand there, diploma in hand, you realize the truth. This wasn't the final boss fight. This was just the last level of the tutorial. Because now you face the biggest, most terrifying challenge of all. A 2-day, 16-hour marathon of an exam that stands as the final gatekeeper to the entire legal profession. It's called the bar exam. And it's not one test. It's a series of tests administered by each individual state, designed to be the final brutal filter separating those who have studied the law from those who are deemed worthy to practice it. For decades, this created a patchwork of different exams across the country. If you passed in Texas, you couldn't just go practice in California. You'd have to take California's exam. But in recent years, a movement towards standardization has taken hold, giving us something called the Uniform Bar Exam, or UBE. Over 40 states and territories have now adopted the UBE, creating a more portable score. But don't be fooled by the word uniform. It doesn't mean easy. It just means your suffering is now standardized. The exam is split into 3 distinct parts, each designed to test a different aspect of your legal mind. First, you have the beast itself, the multi-state bar examination, or the MBE. This is a 200-question, multiple-choice test that covers 7 core subjects: contracts, torts, constitutional law, criminal law and procedure, evidence, real property, and civil procedure. Sounds straightforward, right? A multiple-choice test? We've all done those. Except this isn't like any multiple-choice test you've ever taken. Every question is a miniature story, a complex fact pattern with 4 answer choices that are all designed to look correct. There's the right answer, the answer that's right but for the wrong reason, the answer that's almost right but misses one tiny exception, and the answer that is completely wildly wrong but sounds plausible when your brain is melting from exhaustion. To succeed, you can't just know the law. You have to know the intricate exceptions to the law, and the exceptions to those exceptions, and apply them in seconds. It is a 6-hour gauntlet of pure, unadulterated legal trivia and logic puzzles. Then you have the writing portion. For UBE states, this consists of 2 parts. First, the multi-state essay examination, or ME. This is where you get 6 essay questions, spanning a dozen or more potential subjects. In 30 minutes per essay, you have to read a complex scenario, identify every single legal issue hiding within it, a skill lawyers call issue spotting, and then write a perfectly structured, coherent legal analysis, citing all the relevant rules and applying them to the facts. You have to do this 6 times in a row. It's a test of knowledge, speed, and your ability to organize your thoughts under crushing pressure. The second writing component is the multi-state performance test, the MPT. And this is different. The MPT isn't about what you've memorized. It's about what you can do. They give you a simulated case file, complete with client interviews, evidence, and a library of fictional laws and case precedents. Your task is to act like a junior associate. You might have to draft a persuasive brief to a judge, an objective memorandum to a senior partner, or a demand letter to an opposing party. You have 90 minutes to read, comprehend, outline, and write a complete legal document from scratch. It's the closest the exam gets to simulating the actual day-to-day work of a lawyer, and for many, it's the most intimidating part of the entire test. So, how do you prepare for this three-headed monster? You enter a period of life known simply as bar prep. The moment you graduate law school, you don't celebrate. You don't go on vacation. You pay thousands of dollars, typically between $2,000 and $4,000, to a massive test prep company like Barbary or Themis. And for the next 10 to 12 weeks, your life ceases to be your own. Bar prep is a full-time job. Except it pays nothing and the only thing you produce is anxiety. Your daily schedule is dictated by the program. You wake up, watch 4 to 5 hours of pre-recorded video lectures, spend the afternoon completing hundreds of practice multiple-choice questions, and spend the evening outlining and writing practice essays. You do this 6, sometimes 7 days a week. Your world shrinks to the size of your desk. Your social life evaporates. Relationships are strained. You subsist on coffee and cheap takeout. You cover your walls in posters of intimidating legal flowcharts. The phrase negligence per se haunts your dreams. You're not just learning information. You're trying to physically cram 3 years of a dense, nuanced education into short-term, weaponized recall. You memorize hundreds of acronyms and mnemonic devices to keep it all straight. You learn the difference between larceny by trick and false pretenses. You memorize the 14 different types of evidence that are considered exceptions to the hearsay rule. Your brain becomes a swamp of legal jargon and doctrine. After about 6 weeks, a phenomenon known as bar brain sets in. You start to forget simple, everyday things like your own phone number, because the space in your head has been occupied by the rule against perpetuities. You start issue spotting in real life. You watch a movie and find yourself mentally outlining the potential tort claims the protagonist has against the villain. You are completely and utterly consumed. This is the grind. It is a period of intense isolation and self-doubt. You see your scores on practice exams fluctuate wildly. One day you feel like a genius. The next, you're convinced you'll be the only person in the entire country to fail. The process is designed to break you down and rebuild you into a machine capable of passing one single test. And then the day comes. You fly or drive to a massive, sterile convention center. You join a silent army of thousands of other law school graduates, all with the same look of controlled panic in their eyes. The rules are draconian. You can only bring certain items in a clear plastic bag. No phones, no watches, no bags, no pencil cases. The proctors patrol the aisles like guards in a maximum security prison. The first day is the writing day. 6 hours of essays and performance tests. Your hand cramps into a claw. You race against the clock, your mind a frantic blur of rules and facts. You walk out at the end of the day feeling utterly defeated, convinced you missed a major issue in every single essay. You go back to your hotel room not to relax, but to frantically cram for the second day. Day 2 is the MBE. 6 hours, 200 questions. The morning session is 100 questions in 3 hours. You fill in the bubbles, your heart pounding with every question that seems to have 2 right answers. Then a 1-hour lunch break, where the great temptation is to talk to other people about the questions. A fatal mistake that will only shatter your confidence. Then you go back in for the afternoon session. Another 3 hours. Another 100 questions. This is where the real mental fatigue sets in. The words on the page start to blur. The intricate fact patterns begin to feel like nonsense. You're running on pure adrenaline and muscle memory. And then it's over. The proctor calls time. A wave of stunned silence, followed by a collective, exhausted sigh, washes over the massive hall. You walk out into the sunlight, blinking like you've been underground for a year. You feel nothing. You're too tired to be relieved, too numb to be happy. The war is over. But the battle for your sanity has just begun. Because now you have to wait. For 2 to 3 agonizingly long months, you exist in a state of professional purgatory. Your job offer is contingent on passing. Your entire future, the culmination of 7 years of education and a mountain of debt, hangs in the balance, waiting for an email or a web page to update. You replay every mistake you think you made. You wake up in a cold sweat, convinced you misread a key fact about a property dispute. It is a unique form of psychological torture. Finally, results day arrives. Your heart hammers against your ribs as you log into the State Bar website, which inevitably crashes from the traffic. You frantically refresh the page. And then you see it. A list of passing candidate numbers. You scroll, your hands shaking, searching for your own. And when you find it, the feeling is indescribable. It's not just happiness. It's a tidal wave of pure, unadulterated relief. The weight of a decade of work lifts from your shoulders in an instant. You did it. You passed the bar exam. You've conquered the final boss. You are finally going to be a lawyer. Or are you? Because passing this monumental exam, believe it or not, is still not the final step. There is one more hurdle, one last character judgment that you must pass before they will finally let you call yourself Esquire. This final hurdle is called the Character and Fitness Evaluation. And it is, without a doubt, the most invasive, most personal, and for some the most terrifying part of the entire journey. You've spent years proving you can think like a lawyer. Now, a secretive committee of practicing attorneys is going to decide if you deserve to be one. They aren't looking at your grades anymore. They're not testing your knowledge of contract law. They are looking into your soul. The process begins with a document. But calling it a document is like calling a supernova a little flash of light. This application is a monster. It can be hundreds of pages long. And it asks for a complete and total accounting of your entire adult life. Every address you've ever lived at since you were 18 years old with exact dates. Every job you've ever held, no matter how small, with your supervisor's name and contact information. Every speeding ticket, every financial debt, every single interaction you've had with the legal system. It is a full-body scan of your past, an autobiography written for your harshest critic. And the single most important rule is this: you must be completely, utterly, brutally honest, because they already know the answers. Their job is not to learn about your past. Their job is to see if you will lie about it. Let's break down what they're looking for. First, criminal history. And I don't just mean felonies. People think, oh, I've never been convicted of a major crime, I'm fine. Wrong. They want to know about everything. That misdemeanor for public intoxication in college you thought was expunged? They'll find it. That noise complaint your neighbor filed that resulted in a ticket? You have to disclose it. That time you were arrested but the charges were dropped? Disclose it. The single biggest mistake applicants make is omission. They think, oh, it was so minor it doesn't matter. Or it was sealed, they'll never know. Think again. These committees have investigative powers that would make the FBI blush. They are looking for patterns of behavior that show a disregard for the law. But more than that, they are testing your candor. Lying about a forgotten parking ticket is 1,000 times worse than the ticket itself. The ticket shows you parked in the wrong place. The lie shows you have a character unfit to practice law. Imagine this scenario. A young woman, let's call her Sarah, is at the top of her class. She aced the bar exam. She has a job offer at a prestigious firm. Her whole life is ahead of her. On her character and fitness application, she discloses everything. Almost 10 years ago, on a college spring break trip, she was cited for having an open container on the beach. It was a tiny fine, a non-criminal infraction. She paid it and forgot about it. When filling out the form, she remembers it but thinks, this is ridiculous. It's embarrassing and totally irrelevant. So she leaves it off. Months go by. She gets a letter in the mail. It's not her license. It's a summons. She's been called for a character and fitness interview. She walks into a small wood-paneled room. 3 older, stern-faced lawyers are sitting at a table. In front of them is a massive binder with her name on it. The interview starts, and for 20 minutes it's pleasant. They ask about law school, her goals. Then the lawyer in the middle leans forward, opens the binder and says, Ms. Smith, on your application, you stated you have never been cited for any legal infraction. Is that correct? Her blood runs cold. He then slides a piece of paper across the table. It's a certified copy of the citation from that beach 10 years ago. The question they ask next isn't about the ticket. It's, why did you lie to us? In that moment, her entire career hangs by a thread, not because of a $20 fine, but because of a lapse in judgment, a failure of candor. The second area of intense scrutiny is your financial life. Why? Because lawyers handle other people's money. A lot of it. They are fiduciaries entrusted with client funds, settlement checks, and escrow accounts. If you can't handle your own finances, the bar has zero confidence that you can be trusted with the clients. So they dig. They pull your credit report. They want to see every debt you have. Student loans, credit cards, car payments, mortgages. Having debt isn't an automatic disqualifier. Most law students have a mountain of it. What they're looking for is irresponsibility. Are you in default on your student loans? Have you declared bankruptcy? Do you have a history of failing to pay your bills on time? They see this as a sign of unreliability and potentially desperation. A lawyer drowning in personal debt is a lawyer who might be tempted to dip into a client's trust account. Again, the key is honesty and taking responsibility. If you have financial problems, you disclose them, you explain the circumstances, and most importantly, you show them the plan you have in place to fix it. A payment plan, a budget, communication with your creditors. Hiding it is an absolute death sentence. Acknowledging it and showing you're responsibly handling it demonstrates maturity and character. Finally, they look at academic and professional conduct. This goes all the way back to college. Were you ever disciplined for plagiarism? Did you cheat on an exam? They will ask your law school to turn over your entire file, and any disciplinary actions will be in there. They will contact the employers you listed. Were you fired from a job for cause? Did you have a history of being unreliable? They are building a mosaic of your character, piece by piece, from every corner of your life. The person who cheated on a history paper in college might be the same person who cheats a client later in life. That's the logic. For most applicants, the paper application is enough. If you're honest and your record is relatively clean, you'll get a letter in the mail confirming you've been cleared. But for those with red flags, criminal charges, financial trouble, academic misconduct, or inconsistencies in their application, you get that dreaded summons for an interview. And that interview is your trial. You sit across from that panel of lawyers, and you have to answer for the worst things you've ever done. There is no hiding. There is no deflecting blame. The only winning strategy is to own your mistakes, express genuine remorse, and demonstrate that you have learned and grown from the experience. You have to convince them that the person who made those mistakes is not the same person sitting before them today. You have to prove that despite your past, you possess the integrity, the honesty, and the moral character required to be an officer of the court, a guardian of the law. It is an ordeal, a draining, humbling, and profoundly stressful experience. But if you can get through it, if you can stand in that room, lay your past bare, and convince that committee that you are worthy, then you get the letter. The one that says you have been approved. You have passed the final test. You have been examined not just on your knowledge, but on your very character, and you have been found worthy. And with that letter in hand, the 7-year-long marathon is finally, truly, almost over. All the study, all the debt, all the sacrifice has led to this. You have been approved. You are about to become a lawyer. All that's left is to raise your right hand and take the oath.